Come on, team, use a little force, will you? A few nudges into the door, and we were inside the school's training room, lifting our patient, a tall, broad teenager, around 6'2", with one hell of a stomachache. We cleared the massage table, a few cans of energy drinks and Coke bottles on them as we placed the patient on the table. All right, what have we got? Bad rashes on the body, swollen lips, and a stomachache. Just generic routine work, right? Yeah, right. October 11th, 2001. Those were the days, the EMT life, filled with community outreach programs. We'd set up shop at schools, churches, even sports centers. My lips, however, bore the brunt of that period, a constant reminder of countless CPR demonstrations at local schools. Let's just say some of those enthusiastic youngsters got a bit carried away with their practice technique. Booker T. Washington Carver High School. Now, that's a name I won't soon forget. The auditorium lights cast a harsh glare, reflecting off the dubious sheen of the school's mahogany paneling, as I was placed on a seat in front of everyone on stage, along a couple other lot. As the head droned on about our enriching outreach programs, emphasis very much hers, I found myself playing a game of Spot the Debacle. Rusty paint flake, check. Flickering fluorescent bulb, threatening to plunge us into dramatic darkness. Yeah. A gaggle of preteens perfecting the art of synchronized doodling. Absolutely. Then a blur of movement caught my eye. A kid, clad in last week's gym uniform and sporting a rogue grin, torpedoed in the hall, circling around a teacher as if wanting her immediate attention. Random field trip? Or misplaced fugitive? I mused internally. Just then the microphone materialized under my nose, courtesy of the headmistress's hopeful gaze. "A few words, Mr. Mark?" she inquired, her smile bordering on heroic given the circumstances. My brain, however, was screaming, CPR, defibrillator, anything but another speech. Alas, professionalism held me back. A deep breath and a silent prayer for divine intervention later, I managed a smile that probably resembled a hostage negotiator's. "Thank you, headmistress," I began, channeling all my charm into not blurting out, "Let's just get this over with, shall we?" And, ironically, it was over. The world tilted on its axis. The auditorium doors burst open with a bang, shattering the tense silence. That same teacher I mentioned earlier being disturbed by that little kid practically fell through the doorway, her face a mask of raw panic. "We have a student down," she gasped, clutching the microphone stand for support. "Basketball room needs medical attention now." The auditorium erupted. Gasps tore through the air like shrapnel. Students lurched to their feet, a wave of confused murmuring washing over the room. My own pulse ticked up a notch, more amusement than alarm. This, clearly, wasn't going according to the pre-written script for the thrilling CPR demonstration, and this was certainly not the right place and time to even want one. My gaze darted towards the news-bearing teacher, a cold dread pooling in my gut. Just moments ago, I'd seen her being consistently irritated by that little blur of blue, a mischievous kid clad in a dusty gym uniform, weaving through the throngs of students. The principal, her practiced smile gone, barked orders with surprising efficiency. The auditorium became a scene of controlled chaos, Chairs scraping, students surging towards the exit, a low hum of fear and morbid curiosity replacing the forced pleasantries. My gloved fingers instinctively tightened around the first aid kit resting on my lap, the sterile white a stark contrast to the churning disquiet in my stomach. This wasn't a speech anymore. This was something far more urgent. With a deep breath, I pushed myself off the chair, the stage lights blurring as I shouldered past the throng and raced towards the basketball room, for a child had collapsed. It better not get any worse than it could already be. The squeal of sneakers against linoleum scraped against my already taut nerves as I burst through the gym door. Gone were the sterile lights and controlled chaos of the auditorium. Here, a chaotic scene unfolded on the center court. A knot of students and basketball players swarmed around a figure, crumpled on the floor. Relief flooded me. It wasn't the mischievous kid from earlier, but the grimace contorting the fallen player's face was enough to yank the relief right back out. "Everyone back up, give him some space," I commanded, pushing through the throng. My voice, normally used to calming anxious patients, now had a sharp edge. Kneeling beside the teenager, I scanned for immediate threats. No obvious bleeding, but his breaths came in shallow gasps. "Hey there," I said, forcing a calm I didn't entirely feel. "What's going on?" He winced, squeezing his eyes shut. "It burns. Feels like my stomach exploded. And my mouth. It burns." His voice was a ragged rasp, punctuated by sharp intakes of breath. Bad stomachache. The universal teen excuse gone horribly wrong, or something worse. "All right, hold on," I reassured him, already formulating a plan. "We'll get you to the nurse's office, get you checked out." A quick glance at the surrounding faces revealed a sea of unknowns. Students with worried frowns and a couple of coaches hovering on the periphery. Nope, not my usual crew. Today's outreach program had me flying solo. Fantastic. "Can you stand?" I asked the teenager, gauging his strength. He tried to push himself up, but a groan of pain escaped his lips. 6 feet of teenage angst glared at me with a mix of anger and anguish. Lifting him myself wasn't an option. "All right," I decided. "Basketball team, a little help." 2 figures, gawkier than newborn foals, emerged from the worried crowd. "Great," I muttered under my breath. "Just what I need. Improvisation with shaky hands." They approached the groaning teenager, their hesitant movements more likely to inspire a game of Twister than a safe carry. "All right, listen up, volunteers," I said, my voice sharper than a lunch lady's spatula. "We need a 3-point system here. You," I pointed to a lanky boy with worried eyes, "support his head and shoulders. You," I gestured to a broader student, "carefully slide your hand under his knees. Now we lift together on my count of 3. 1, 2. The teenager yelped as they hoisted him, more of a hoist than a smooth lift. The whole operation resembled a ragtag team attempting to move a particularly stubborn couch. 3, I finished, wincing as they shuffled forward at a snail's pace. "This is going to be a long walk. Anyone?" I asked, my voice laced with a touch of sardonic amusement. "Know of a closer pit stop with something a little less floor and more comfort vibe?" "Training room," a voice boomed from the back. "They've got a massage table in there." "Hallelujah," I breathed, a silent prayer for a decent surface offered skyward. A massage table in a high school training room. Now that was a story for another day. The chipped green door of the training room resisted our initial push. A frustrated groan echoed from the students behind me. "Of course," I muttered, as a few students nudged their shoulders against the wood with more force. It finally budged with a reluctant creak. Inside, the stale smell of sweat and athletic tape hung heavy. We maneuvered the groaning teenager through the doorway, a lanky mess at 6'2", and onto the massage table in the corner. It was cluttered with half-empty energy drinks, dented protein shakers, and a few bottles of Coke, remnants of pre-workout rituals or just soda. "All right, let's see what's going on here," I said, clearing a space on the table. The flustered teacher, who turned out to be the school nurse, mea culpa on the initial confusion, joined us with a medical kit. We started a basic check. The kid's temperature was elevated, not scorching, but definitely warm. He could barely speak through the pain, but managed a weak groan that confirmed his discomfort. "Feels too damn hot," he rasped. An ambulance was already on its way, standard procedure for anything even remotely serious. While the nurse focused on keeping the kid calm and still, I turned to his classmates, hoping to glean some history. "He's your teammate, right? Any idea how he's been acting lately?" They all shook their heads. He was their resident ball of energy, the one who always kept them on their toes. This subdued state was a stark contrast. Allergies? No one knew of any. Apparently, he had been fine pregame, just a little quiet compared to usual. Walking out of the training room, he had been holding his mouth shut, but nothing seemed wrong. He was just holding a drink in his mouth. "Holding a drink in his mouth?" I asked, curiosity piqued. "Yeah, weird habit," one kid offered. "He claims he likes to savor his drinks, swallows them slowly." Not an ideal habit, but hardly a cause for medical concern. The teammate continued. "He mentioned feeling a bit cold during the game, just before that shove sent him down. It looked like a normal fall, but then he started acting weird." By this point, the nurse must have noticed something because she called me over. A few splotches of rash and slightly swollen lips on our patient. My experience told me this could be an allergic reaction. "So what did he drink before the game?" The answer came back nonchalantly, confirming a suspicion I hadn't quite dared to form. "Dunno, some drink or something, depends on what Derek," he gestured to a kid in the back, "brought. He always swipes something from him." The kid in question, the one I'd seen earlier causing a stir, looked sheepish as he shuffled forward, fetching a partially filled plastic Coke bottle. "Coke?" I raised an eyebrow. This barely teenager couldn't meet my gaze. He sported a fresh bruise on his arm, hinting at another story for another time. But right now, the priority lay with the kid on the table. My focus shifted to the drink. Twisting the cap open, I took a cautious sniff. The scent that wafted up was anything but cola, which spelled one thing. This Coke had been tampered with. "This the culprit, then?" I asked Derek, holding up the suspect Coke bottle. He mumbled a barely audible confirmation, eyes glued to the chipped linoleum floor. I scanned the expiration date etched on the plastic. 6 months to go. Manufacturing error seemed like a long shot for a brand like Coke. A cynical snort escaped me. Big corporations messing up. Fat chance. "All right, kiddo, where'd you get this?" I pressed gently, knowing a scared kid wouldn't offer much information. But before Derek could stammer out a reply, the nurse chimed in, her voice laced with unexpected sharpness. "Leave him alone. How could he possibly know what was wrong with the drink he brought?" Her sudden protectiveness surprised me. Was she worried I'd traumatize the kid with basic questioning? Look, I'm not trying to scare him, I countered, frustration creeping into my voice. But something's definitely off with this drink. The nurse, however, seemed determined to be a roadblock. There you go again, putting him on the spot. We can find the culprit who sold him this mess, but a kid wouldn't know why his drink smells like adobo loco. She trailed off, her cheeks flushing red. That's when the penny dropped. Like what? My gaze snapped back to the nurse. Like what? Exactly? She stammered, her voice barely a whisper. Adobo loco. Lady, how do you know what it smells like? My words cut through the tension. Her face drained of color, and Derek flinched beside her. Mom, is that why you bought the sauce yesterday? He stammered, eyes wide. Wait, I sputtered, completely thrown. She's your mother? The realization hit me like a physical blow. The frantic protectiveness, the sudden knowledge of the strange smell, it all clicked into place. But the revelation was short-lived. The nurse, overwhelmed by the weight of the situation, crumpled to the floor in a heap of sobs. It was supposed to be a prank, she choked out, tears streaming down her face. I just put a little hot sauce in Derek's drink, hoping James would take a sip and stop bullying him. I never thought it would be this bad. Look at his arms, she cried, gesturing towards a fresh bruise peeking out from Derek's sleeve. The entire scenario became clear. James, our patient, was the bully. Derek, his target. This desperate woman, his mother, had tried to protect him with a misguided prank. It was hard to judge. Her intentions weren't malicious, but the consequences were dire. How could a little hot sauce trigger such a violent reaction? Ma'am, I said with a wry smile, while I appreciate the creativity behind the fiery beverage, this turned out much worse than intended. We still have a lot to figure out about what caused this reaction, but spiking a kid's drink with hot sauce isn't exactly on the EMT handbook's helpful pranks list. I gestured toward James, struggling on the table. The woman shook her head, her face buried in her hands. Security arrived shortly after and escorted the distraught nurse away. Derek watched her go, a mix of fear and confusion etched on his face. His mother, driven by love, had become a source of both comfort and terror in that moment. James was rushed to the hospital. The cause of his reaction became clear: a severe capsaicin allergy triggered by the spiked Coke. This explained his habit of holding drinks in his mouth, a desperate attempt to avoid any unpleasant taste before swallowing. But adobo loco, a notoriously potent hot sauce, was a different beast altogether. This wasn't a scene of villains and heroes. It was a messy situation born out of desperation and a misunderstanding of allergies. The consequences, however, were real and could have been tragic.